Hey everyone, Gill Gross here. Post-match, Alexander Zverev versus Andy Murray, Indian Wells 2021, round 3. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video in 3, 2, 1. It was Alexander Zverev winning in straight sets, coming from down a break in both sets. Final score 6-4, 7-6, used a second set tiebreak, and Zverev has his first ever win over Andy Murray. The head-to-head was previously 2-love. It was actually Murray's last top 10 win a season ago in Cincinnati in New York when Murray won a 3-setter there. And then it was Australian Open 2016 when Zverev was an absolute baby. And it might have been the first time I ever saw Alexander Zverev play. It's the first match that I really remember watching of his. Anyway, let's get into this. A couple of big picture things. Of course, Zverev has still lost just one time since Wimbledon. Murray continues to look for that signature win, but I will say he is looking stronger and stronger. He is miles ahead of where he was seemingly just a couple of months ago. And his recent losses, a lot of them are to good players. You know, he's not losing to bad players. He's losing to good players. Shapo at Indian Wells, Hurkacz at Cincinnati, Tsitsipas at the U.S. Open, Hurkacz again in Metz, Ruud in San Diego, and now Zverev here in Indian Wells. But let's break down this match now, and I thought the biggest problem for Murray and advantage for Zverev was how well the German was handling the slow stuff, the low-pace balls that Zverev was getting looks at. He was doing such a good job at punishing them, handling them. He has the power, even on a slow court, to do damage off of a low-pace ball. And in this matchup, that's impressive. Murray is moving a lot better now. He has, I think at this point, back to having above average speed and court coverage. And we know how slow these Indian Wells courts are, but when Zverev had a lot of time on the ball, he was really deadly in this one, and that was not a rare occasion. The reason was for that was, first and foremost, Murray blocking that first serve return, which is something that he's always done against a server of Zverev's caliber. But right now, what Andy Murray is trying to do is transform himself into a more offensive player. And he took good steps in this match. I thought he went after his forehand a lot better. I thought he hit his second serve more aggressively. He did a great job with his first serve, got a lot of effectiveness out of that shot. But it's still not the complete package. And one of those areas where it's not the complete package is the return of serve, where Andy Murray continues to use the block return against any server of a high caliber, anyone who can really hit in the upper 120s, low 130s, like an Alexander Zverev. Murray blocked all of the returns, and Zverev, again, with his power, with his racket head acceleration, he can do a lot with that ball, even against Andy Murray's defense. Now, there was a time, and yes, I went back and I looked at 2016. Sure enough, Murray did block the first serve returns in that match when Zverev's first serve was probably a little bit slower, definitely was a little bit slower, and Murray was in his prime. But back then, Murray could hit a deep block return and defend behind it, and that was not an issue for him. Now, I cannot sit here and say Murray shouldn't block the return. I can't do that. Zverev has an elite first serve. It is so easy for me to sit in this chair and say, well, Murray should try to hit over the returns. That is hard. And to Murray's credit, he makes a lot of returns. So maybe it is best that Murray blocks it. But what it is my job to do, it is my job to tell you what was happening here. And I will tell you that it was not often that Murray blocked a return in play. Zverev got to tee off on that +1 ball, and Murray was able to dig out and win the point from defensive positions, or he was able to get back to neutral successfully. Rather, it was Zverev doing really good +1 damage off of that ball, and Murray unable to dig out of those defensive positions more often than not. I am just telling you that's how it was, and credit to Zverev. Big serve, really good at attacking that first ball off of the low pace block return, which most players wouldn't be able to do, but that's how it was. The second thing that Zverev was taking advantage of in terms of attacking the low pace balls was Murray's frequent slice backhand, his frequent usage of that shot. I thought that Murray went to it too much, but I jumped the gun here. I wanted to make one more point first. Murray slicing on a more regular basis when defending is a big factor here. And that's one of the main things that people have noticed about post-hip surgery Murray is that when he's pushed out wide on his backhand, he slices more often instead of hitting the open stance two-hander where he hits over it. I found that he went to slice on the forehand sometimes too. Again, it's another thing. It's hard for me to sit here and say that Murray should hit more topspin defense. It's much easier said than done. But I'll just say, Zverev was handling the slice defense really, really well, especially on the forehand side. I do think Zverev is pretty excellent at hitting his forehand off of slice, whether it's a runaround forehand, whether it's from the middle of the court. I think he does a good job hitting low forehands aggressively, an excellent job actually, hitting low forehands aggressively. And I thought that was a problem. Lastly, we get to not the slice defense, not the block return, but the rally ball slice. And again, I don't think it was effective. I thought Murray hit a lot of meaningless kind of nothing slices that allowed Zverev to either just trade the backhand aggressively, the drive backhand aggressively, or run around and hit forehands. There were even some times where Murray hit the slice directed directly at Zverev's forehand, and I don't think it worked out well for him. Overall, this was one of the major keys to the match for me. Zverev was way better backhand to backhand. He was stronger on the ad side overall. He offered both more offense on the backhand side and more consistency. His drive was a lot more confident than Murray's. And this is where I wonder if Murray is a little bit too smart for his own good. And to make that point, I want to momentarily zoom out and say Murray's best advantage in this matchup right now is probably his tennis IQ. He does more things on the court. He has more creativity, more craft. He uses a lot more interesting tactics, Andy Murray, and that is one of his advantages over Zverev because, quite frankly, from a technical perspective, it's hard to think of a lot of things that Murray does better than Zverev at this point. But one of those things is the tennis IQ. I have to say, I thought Zverev's simplified approach, at least on the backhand, was an advantage for him. And I thought Murray was overthinking that backhand side. And that, again, resulted in slice backhands that I thought were not effective. And, Murray just mixing it up. Andy massaging the redirected backhands either middle or down the line just to try to test the Zverev forehand, but without a lot of purpose. And I felt the drop shot was another crutch for Murray, the drop shot down the line on the backhand side. He did win a couple of points behind it, but most of those points, all but one of those, required magical low percentage shot making behind it. Far more often, Zverev was up to that ball and did a lot with those forehand drop shot retrievals. Zverev is excellent with his forehand drop shot retrieval. He does a good job of hitting over the ball and getting it up and down instead of slicing, instead of pushing with continental grip. He does a good job of just using the forehand grip and still controlling that shot. And he did it on the break point in the first set. I also thought Murray made too many errors on his topspin backhand, even when the intention was not creative. But overall, it just didn't seem confident. It felt like Murray was always thinking on that side instead of just playing. And I would tell Murray, if I were coaching, I don't care that Zverev has a strong backhand. So do you. Don't overthink it. Hit it. Hit that drive backhand cross court. And he wasn't confident in going toe-to-toe against that Zverev backhand. Why? Because Murray's an intellectual. He's an analytics guy, and he wants to attack the weaknesses. Well, you got to worry about your own game as well. And I thought his his tendency to almost be intimidated by the Zverev backhand was affecting his own backhand's effectiveness and his execution on that side. Just play some cross-court drives. You can't be afraid to do it. Wait for your chance to go hard down the line. I never saw that pattern from Murray. I never saw him hit a couple of confident cross-court drives and then a big topspin backhand down the line. Like, none of his points were constructed that way. And that's one of his strengths. So, to me, you got to sometimes just be confident going to your opponent's strengths. And I think that was one thing Murray could have done better. In the tiebreak, by the way, Murray went down a mini break at Laval with that backhand drop shot, and he went down the line and he hit it wide. He also missed a routine backhand drive at 2-love. So this was major. I'll tell you what, the backhand was just a total mismatch here, and Murray, Zverev hit it way better than Murray, and a lot of Murray's big mistakes were on that side, which is obviously uncharacteristic. You think Andy Murray, the most consistent backhand in the world for most of his prime, along with Djokovic. Credit to Zverev, if we're going to talk about the tiebreak specifically, he made all of his first serves in the second half of the breaker. And for a lot of the match, Murray was actually getting the same number, if not more, free points than Zverev. That was not the case in the tiebreak when Zverev had a couple of free points, 2 of them, and some good +1 play at or from 5-4. Match point, however, was a tough one to lose for Murray. There was a backhand pass that Murray had a very easy look at it. He decided to go right at Zverev, and Zverev, to his credit, made a very impressive reflex volley. And then he might have made another reflex volley. Murray had a forehand volley, and at this point, they're both at the net, and the ball is pinballing back and forth, and Murray should have probably gone one more time right at Zverev, but instead of going at the body, he tried to go cross court and he missed it wide. It's not a situation, it's a situation where the best shot is still to go middle there. It's always difficult, to kind of second guess. It's a bang bang play, but Murray was upset, smashed the racket on match point, but the margins were tiny. And remember, we're talking about Andy Murray off of a hip surgery. He's outside the top 100 right now. He's trying to get back into it, and he's playing a dude who's lost one match since Wimbledon, and 3 in the world, right? Or 4. The rankings at this point, it's like, 4, sorry. Tsitsipas 3. We're talking about that guy, and Andy Murray is right there with him, right? So that in itself is impressive, but the margins are tiny, and they went Zverev's way. Overall, Zverev was more clutch in this match, despite a couple of awful overheads, including getting broken serving for the match. But ultimately, Murray was up in both sets. He had game points in the second set to go up 4-1. Then he had love 30 to get the break back at 2-3. So you got the feeling that Murray's level was just kind of dropping in the big points, and that's been a theme. I wouldn't really ding Andy on that, but it seems like there is something going on mentally here when he plays the very best in the world, where he's shrinking a little bit under pressure, Andy. And he's playing better tennis when early in the games. He's playing better tennis early in the matches. He's won a couple of first sets and lost matches from up a set. You just feel like he is not quite mentally where he would want to be in terms of his match fitness. And I thought that played out in this match. Zverev, not the most clutch performance by him, but certainly in the tiebreak, he was pretty good. He did make some mistakes, though. It was not a clean match. And overall, Zverev can play a lot better. He was off on his second serve. He was off on his forehand. And as I said, it was one of the worst overhead matches you'll see. It was probably the worst he's ever hit his overhead in his career, perhaps. I have seen him miss overheads in the past, but this was really bad, and he did miss 2 overhead serving for the match, and he'll look back and he'll feel lucky that didn't come back to haunt him. But again, it was good offensive tennis by Zverev. He was very, very solid on the backhand side, where he far outplayed Murray. He served well, especially in the clutch moments. Towards the end of the second set, Zverev was the better server. It took him a little while to get to that place, and he was the steadier and the better player. Big win for Zverev. And in the next round, he will face Gael Monfils, who just took out Kevin Anderson. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.